perhaps what I'm hearing is I'm being introduced to all of you delightful Cincinnati folks that this is quite a gem to have on the lineup. So I'm very thankful for this late addition to our lineup. I have a feeling someone is well entrenched in the Cincinnati scene here. Please welcome to the stage, Jon Cain.
Thank you. Tonight I would like to tell two stories about my very first brand new motorcycle. Many years ago, the summer of 1976, I had just graduated from design school, and as luck would have it, I got a job at the Vetter Fairing Company in Rantoul, Illinois, and I worked in the design studio. And about 2 weeks after I started there, I bought my first bike. It was a 1976 Yamaha XS750D. I thought it was beautiful. It was silver. It had mag wheels and shaft drive and a black engine with highlighted cooling fins. And it was the prettiest bike I could imagine when I was 23 years old. And I had it about a week, and how can I put this? I was chasing my oldest brother through Vermilion County, Indiana, trying to go to a county park, and I fell down. And I didn't just fall down, I fell down at the one corner in Vermilion County, Indiana, where there's the state home for the county home for the mentally infirm. And when I picked my bike up, brand new bike, the gear shift lever was broken off of it. So I had to leave it there. So I wrecked my bike in front of my brother and some other friends, and I had to leave it at the Vermilion County Home for the Mentally Infirm, which is another story entirely. This was on Saturday. On Sunday, I drove my old pickup truck, and I picked my bike up, and I took it back to Vetter, where I worked, and I started thinking, I'm going to have to fix this. I didn't have enough money to have the Yamaha shop fix it. So I went down to the local Yamaha shop where I bought it, and they had the clutch cover gasket, and they had the shift shaft, which goes through the engine, but they didn't have the shop manual for it. So I was basically on my own with this bike. And at the end of the week, on Friday, I cleared out a big space in the design studio, 2 benches long. And I got a fresh notebook, and I was ready to go. I was going to wing it. And so I came in on Saturday morning, and every time I took a part off that brand new motorcycle, I put it in a specific spot, and I made notes about it so I could figure out how to put it back together when I got the shift shaft. And I took like 5 hours doing this. Very careful, very, very particular about the whole thing, and I laid it all out. And Vetter at that time was very busy, so most of the people that worked in the design studio and in the tooling department were there working that day. And I didn't think much of it because I was concentrating on my brand new motorcycle. Well, I was tired after 5 or 6 hours of thinking too hard. And so I told myself, I'm just gonna go home and drink a beer and think about this, and I'll come back on Sunday morning and assemble the whole thing. And I came back in at about 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. No, I didn't go to church. I had my new shift shaft, and it went in. I had to take part of the clutch apart to get to the shift shaft, and all that went in. And this, piece after piece, the notes were working, my brain was working, everything was great. And then there was a brass shim. A piece of brass, nicely turned, looked like a Yamaha, was there in the row of parts. And I looked in my notes, and that damn shim isn't in my notes. And I looked on the table, and it wasn't, there wasn't a number next to it. It was just there. And so I sat there and tried to figure out where this damn shim went. And I couldn't. And I sat there and thought about it for like 2 hours. Because I had to get my bike back together right. And after 2 hours of thinking about it and going over my notes and taking stuff off and putting it back on and trying to figure it out, I heard the head tooling engineer at Vetter Fairing Company off in the distance snickering just like that. And I thought, that's odd. And so I went and investigated, and the guy's name is Jon Cain. And he really is a very good tooling guy. But it turns out that Don had watched me all day Saturday fuss with this new motorcycle, and he decided that he was going to mess with me and machine a nice shim and put it in the pie. When I figured it out, I only chased him around the property for about 15 minutes. And when I finally ran out of steam, I took this piece of brass and I beamed it. And then I went in and put the rest of the bike back together, and everything worked fine. And on Monday morning, I rode it into the shop and came in. The bike was perfect. I hadn't done anything wrong. But there was a note on my toolbox from Craig Vetter. Come and see me. So I go and I knock on Mr. Vetter's office door. And I introduce myself because he didn't know me. He just heard the story. And he said, "Oh, you're that Jon Cain guy." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "Tell me what happened yesterday." And I told him that evil Don Zacher had machined this piece of brass and put it in my string of parts, and that I chased him around the building for 15 minutes, and then at the end of it, I hit him with that brass piece. And he said, "Please don't hurt my tooling engineer." Now, Mel, our host here tonight, where's Mel? She's hiding. She's gone. Okay. When I tell these stories, Mel always says, "John, when you tell a story, it sounds like there should be a moral to the story." And so I've given this a lot of thought, and this is just for you, Mel. The moral to this story is, if you're ever presented with an opportunity to innocently prank anyone, especially a motorcyclist, you are duty bound to do so. I have 3 questions for the audience tonight. The first question is, did anybody ride a new or a new to you motorcycle tonight? Hold up your hands. All right, there's 1. Anybody else? 2, 3, 4. Good. Good. We're going to have some fun. What are they? Oh, pizza.
2013 Harley Davidson Limited.
Okay. Okay. Elizabeth,
Yeah,
what's your new bike?
it's a 2001 Triumph Tiger
Ooh,
995.
I saw that. Right. There was another person with a motorcycle?
2022 Yamaha Tracer 9.
Ooh, all right.
But Jonathan, the best part is, I took that motherfucking back wheel off and put the new tire on all by myself. I'm a 3-year-old down there.
Very, very good. Very good. Where are they parked?
I think I got all the ships in the right place.
Elizabeth, where's your bike parked?
It's over there.
Okay, okay. Out here on the street, and where's yours parked? Hopefully out on the street.
Oh yeah, that's out there.
Eric knows this part of the story. And I used to do this with just motor oil.
Are you gonna prank my bike?
But I'm now environmentally conscious. And Eric, you and I have some work to do. My second story tonight is about the same motorcycle about 3 weeks later. I was 23 when I worked at Vetter, and I didn't know a lot about girls and women and things like that. But one day, I got that Yamaha out, and I lived in a little town called Thomasboro, and it was on a 4-lane highway that went up to Rantoul, Illinois, where the Vetter plant was. And I was sitting at the stop sign, and an early Mustang went by me, and the prettiest girl at Vetter Ferry was in the passenger seat. And I thought, be cool, just calm down, just, you know, if you do anything, just be cool. And I pulled out, and we stopped at the front gate to the Chanute Air Force Base. And that Mustang parked in the left lane, and I came up in the right lane, and I thought, you know, just look at Elizabeth and nod, you know, be cool. And so I pulled up next to her, and I looked over and I nodded, and I put my left foot out, like that, into a pool of grease. And as my foot slipped and slipped and slipped, right before the side of the bike touched the road, something in my groin exploded. And she's looking at me. And I'm looking at her. And she rolls the window down. And this is my sexy Elizabeth voice. She leaned out the window and said, "John, do you need any help?" And I looked at her and I said, "No, I'm fine." Luckily, the very next person on Route 45 that came up behind me in traffic was a guy that worked in the design studio. And we picked the bike up and I rode it into work. And every time that Elizabeth saw me after that, she imitated my voice when I answered if I needed any help. And the moral to this story, again, Mel, wherever you're at, the moral to this story is always be careful where you step when you're trying to impress somebody. Because if you're not careful, you're never going to be able to make up for it. They're never going to forget it. It's going to be part of the lore of you being there. Now, about a year and a half after all these incidents happened, when I left Vetter, Elizabeth came to me, and the one thing that she remembered about me was that damn morning when I dropped my motorcycle. And the head of the tooling department, Don Sacker, came to me and presented me with that very piece of brass, which is still in the toolbox at home. So those are my two new motorcycle stories.